dusty old textbook. Sometimes the real story, well, it's captured in something much more personal, like the strokes of a single pen. And that's exactly what we're doing today. We're going to decode a set of handwritten notes that lay out 30 absolutely pivotal years in India's fight for freedom, what we call the Gandhian era. I mean, this line from the notes just says it all, doesn't it? One person's handwriting, one nation's story. Wow. This is so much more than just a study guide, you know? It's literally a timeline of how one philosophy, one really determined movement, and one pretty unique leader completely transforms the destiny of a whole subcontinent. All right, so where do we even begin with a story this huge? Well, it all starts with a pretty radical idea. Think of it as a new kind of weapon, something nobody had really seen before in the arsenal of protest. It's called satyagraha, which basically translates to truth force. And this, right here, this was the absolute core of Mahatma Gandhi's philosophy, nonviolent resistance. And what's so fascinating is how Gandhi went about this. He didn't just, launch some massive nationwide movement right out of the gate. Nope. He started small. He tested his methods. First in 1917 in Champaran, fighting for indigo farmers. Then a year later in Kedah for peasant rights. And also in Ahmedabad for mill workers. Each one of these was a small local victory, but together they were huge. They were proof that nonviolence could actually work. And that built the foundation for everything that was about to come. But of course, the British Empire wasn't just going to sit back. They pushed back hard. In 1919, they passed the really draconian Rollout Act. I mean, this law was a total assault on civil liberties. It basically allowed the government to throw anyone they suspected of sedition in jail without a trial. Can you imagine? The public response, as you can guess, was immediate and absolutely furious. So this led to protests all over the country, like the one you see here in Amritsar in April of 1918. Now, it is so important to understand this. This gathering was completely 100% peaceful. People were just coming together to protest this unjust law and the arrest of their leaders. What started as a simple demonstration of unity was about to turn into, well, a scene of unimaginable tragedy. And then it happened. The Jallianwala Bagh massacre. Troops, led by General Dyer, marched in, blocked the only exit, and just opened fire on a completely unarmed crowd. The official British records say 389 people were killed. Just think about that. This one single brutal act, it was the point of no return for so many people in India. So, in response to that horror and to the Rollout Act, we see the first real mass-based national campaign get off the ground, the non-cooperation movement. The goal was simple but huge, bringing the entire British administration to a grinding halt. How? By boycotting everything. British schools, British courts, British-made goods, everything. But then, in 1922, something happened at a place called Chauri Chara. A protest turned violent and police station was set on fire. For Gandhi, this was a complete betrayal of the principle of nonviolence. And his reaction was just stunning. He immediately called off the entire movement. His reasoning, and this quote says it all, was, "I can't be part of a government that has become satanic." It just goes to show, for him, how you fought was just as important as what you were fighting for. Okay, so that pause, it was only temporary, but when the movement came back, oh, it was stronger. And this time the goal was way clearer, way more ambitious. They weren't just asking for reforms anymore. The new goal was Purna Swaraj, complete and total independence. And you can really see this new sense of resolve in how they responded to the Simon Commission in 1927. Get this. The British send over a whole commission to decide India's political future. But there wasn't a single Indian member on it. I mean, the arrogance is just staggering, right? And it totally backfired. It unified the entire nation in protest. The response was a massive boycott, with chants of "Simon, go back," echoing from one end of the country to the other. All of this rising tide of defiance, it all came to a head at the Lahore Congress session in 1929. This was a truly historic meeting. It was here that the Indian National Congress officially declared Purna Swaraj, complete independence, as its one and only goal. No more compromises. The objective was now set in stone. Okay, so you've got the goal defined. Now you need a new strategy to get there, right? And this is where we see the shift to civil disobedience. The idea evolved. It wasn't just about refusing to cooperate anymore. Now it was about actively, and of course non-violently, breaking specific, unjust laws altogether as a nation. And the perfect example of this in action, the Salt March of 1930. This was just pure political genius. I mean, why salt? Think about it. It's something every single person in India needed, rich or poor, and the British had a monopoly on it and taxed it heavily. So after his demands to the viceroy were rejected, Gandhi starts walking. For 24 days, he walks 240 miles to the sea. And for what? To pick up a handful of salt, and in doing so, symbolically break the British law. This one simple, powerful act, which has captured the world's imagination and kicked off this massive wave of civil disobedience all across India. All right, this brings us to the final and most decisive chapter of the whole struggle. You have to remember the context here. World War II is raging across the globe, and back in India, the call for freedom has reached an absolute fever pitch. This is the Quit India movement. So, it's 1942. The British are in the thick of World War II, and they desperately need India's cooperation. So they send over something called the Cripps Mission. But their offer, it was, well, not great. They offered dominion status, which is kind of like self-governance, but still under the crown. And here's the kicker. Only after the war was over. For India, this was just too little too late. Gandhi had that famous line, calling it a post-dated check on a failing bank. Yeah, the negotiations failed. Big time. So, with diplomacy off the table, Gandhi issues the ultimate call to action. On August 8th, 1942, his message to the people of India was simple, direct, and absolutely electrifying. Do or die. This was it. This was the call for one final, mass struggle to force the British to quit India once and for all. And the British response was just as swift and absolute. The moment the Quit India resolution was passed, they arrested the entire leadership of the Indian National Congress. Gandhi, Nehru, all of them, gone overnight. But here's the thing. They thought that would stop it. It didn't. The movement just exploded anyway, with local leaders and ordinary people stepping up and taking charge. Now, this Quit India movement, combined with the fact that Britain was exhausted after World War II, basically made their rule in India impossible to sustain. But the final victory, well, it was incredibly complex. It was a bittersweet moment that came at a terrible, terrible cost, because it led not just to independence, but also to partition. Those final years were just a whirlwind of frantic, last-minute negotiations. There was a final, last-ditch effort called the Cabinet Mission in 1946 that tried to keep India united. But it was just too late. The demand for a separate Muslim state, Pakistan, which was championed by Muhammad Ali Jinnah, had become completely non-negotiable. And that's when Lord Mountbatten arrives, and his mandate is crystal clear and super urgent. Transfer power and do it fast. And so the final outcome really came down to a story of two different lines. On one hand, you had a legislative line, the Indian Independence Act of 1947. This was the triumph, the culmination of decades of struggle. But then there was the other line, the Radcliffe Line, a border drawn hastily on a map by a man who'd never been there, which created Pakistan, tore the subcontinent apart, and unleashed a level of violence that was just unprecedented. And the endgame happened so fast. I mean, the plan to partition the country was announced in June. The law making it happen was passed in July. And then, just like that, at the stroke of midnight on August 15th, 1947, after almost 200 years of British rule, India was finally an independent nation. So, as we look back at this whole incredible journey, all the way from a few lines of handwriting to an entire nation's freedom, we're left with one big question, aren't we? In a world that's still grappling with its own conflicts, its own injustices, what does this legacy, this story of nonviolent struggle, of immense sacrifice, and of a really complex victory, what does it teach us today?